Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Myth. So today we're going to continue the series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project, more specifically the Nintendo 64 core, because even though development is done and Robert or FPGA Zoomspass has moved on to new project, we still have a lot of fun to have here, especially on the Turbo core, because what we have discovered is Gauntlet Legends, which is one of the games that seems to freeze semi-regularly on the standard core, seems to be 100% playable on the current Turbo core. So we'll go through some gameplay and talk about why that is. Before you get too far involved, that'd be a huge favor. Go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But in everyone's testing of the Turbo core, we're finding a lot of very interesting things. Obviously, at this point in time, we know that Resident Evil 2 is 100% beatable. I have gone through an entire playthrough without seeing a single freeze, and other people have done the same. And even if it does freeze, some other people have gotten 1 or 2 freezes, but at least on the Leon campaign side, you're 100% able to beat the game. Gauntlet Legends seems to be the exact same thing. I spoke with multiple people that are in different spots in their playthrough, and pretty much everyone has said that they have not yet seen this game freeze. Now, if you play Gauntlet Legends on the standard core, it can and will freeze every once in a while. It doesn't seem to be specific to any one action or any one effect or any one amount of enemies on screen. It does seem like a truly random variable. But in all my time playing Gauntlet Legends on the Turbo core and everyone else's, we've yet to actually see this thing freeze in any sort of meaningful way whatsoever, and that is absolutely spectacular, because not only is that one more game that's playable on the cores, this is also an awesome game, especially if you bring friends along into the mix, because as good as Gauntlet is as a single player experience, it becomes that much better as a multiplayer experience. And with the Turbo core giving you better frame rates than even real hardware would see, this now becomes a definitive way to play the game unless you run the arcade board. And you'll see here in all of the combat, all of the motion, it doesn't really seem to matter how many enemies are on screen at once or how many polygons the engine is drawing. It is staying smooth, it's staying responsive, and importantly, it is not freezing whatsoever. And there's so many different graphical effects in this game, so many different little touches, it's possible that any one of them could be causing a problem in the standard core. So basically you're going to attack, use a lot of different spells, and try to get this game to do as many variables as possible to see again if we can get it to freeze. Because you would think maybe that there was some sort of lag in the RAM access speed, and that might come down to some of the engine slowing down when all of the enemies are on screen all at once versus real Nintendo 64 hardware, and maybe that's why the Turbo core is actually overcoming this. That's the interesting thing. We don't really have an answer as to why this works so much as we have the answer that it does work, and that is the great thing. I've played probably 10 hours of Gauntlet Legends in my spare time just to kind of check it out and be able to more informed talk about this, and again, I haven't seen the game do anything whatsoever other than just play and be fun, and that's what you want out of an FPGA core, a re-implementation of Nintendo 64 hardware in logic elements. You want to just sit down and have fun. You don't want to think about the technology in place that's allowing you to do that. You just want to play it like it's a normal game console. And the great part is, at least in all of this testing, Gauntlet Legends now can do just that. You just sit down, play, have fun, and you stop thinking about what's going on in the background. Now, I can't guarantee that this won't freeze for you. There's many different MiSTer builds out there using different versions of the RAM, using different everything, so it is not something that I can 100% unequivocally say that you're going to sit down and have a 100% complete freeze-free playthrough. What I'm saying is pretty much everyone I have talked to that has tested this on the Turbo core has gotten the exact same result. And you'll see here when there's no enemies on screen whatsoever, this game will absolutely rip and tear as far as the frame rate is concerned. We've already completed level 1 with absolutely no issue whatsoever. Everything loads in correctly, all of the graphics are here. This does just feel like Gauntlet Legends on the Nintendo 64. And again, I keep seeing questions in the comments about the sound quality when you're using the Turbo core. I can't stress enough, this does not change the speed or pitch of any of the audio, because that's not what it's overclocking. So go ahead and listen for 45 seconds, hear that it sounds good, and I'll be back with more Gauntlet. So you'll hear there again, all of the music is at the proper speed and cadence, all of the pitch is correct, all the sound effects sound good. Overclocking the core and using the turbo core have no effect whatsoever on either the sound quality or the speed at which it plays back. That seems to be a little bit of a misnomer from years past in different emulation and overclocking techniques that has persisted throughout all of this process. Every single game you throw at the turbo core, if it takes advantage of the unlocked frame rates, you're not going to hear any difference in the audio quality or speed whatsoever. And again, as we play through Gauntlet Legends here, you can just see how incredibly smooth this is. This is a much better experience in my opinion than playing it on real Nintendo 64 hardware, because this game definitely could lag a ton on real hardware back in the day. It was an arcade board and it had a lot more power than the Nintendo 64 did, and while it is a very accomplished port, you have to realize that the Nintendo 64 just couldn't keep up frame rate wise when it threw this many enemies on screen at once. And that's why you see a lot of the same enemies in these same areas. They only really need to load into RAM once and they can basically just copy themselves versus having to have 10 distinct enemy variants on screen. But with all of the effects, all of the different enemies coming in, all of the different attacks and potions and anything else you can do in Gauntlet Legends, again, I haven't seen this game stagger, stutter, or otherwise freeze once. Everything just seems to work, and that is absolutely incredible. Unfortunately, these results don't go over to Jet Force Gemini or something like Conquer. Jet Force Gemini remains unplayable, and Conquer will randomly freeze, although you can still beat the game. If you want to see a testing series on Conquer, leave me a comment down below. I've been thinking about it, but I haven't decided quite yet. But you'll see there with all of the explosions, sometimes in some games, the particle effects or other random things will cause the game to freeze. It seems like in Conquer a lot of times, certain effects will freeze the game consistently. But over on Gauntlet Legends side of things, it just doesn't seem to happen. And again, that is incredible. It makes the list of games that don't work on the cores even smaller. We've already reclaimed Resident Evil 2, and now we have Gauntlet Legends to add to the mix. And there's a couple other smaller games that I'm not going to run individual videos on, but I may do a updated what games work and what games don't video, so you guys better understand that moving forward into the future, because I don't want someone 2 years from now just to read something random saying Gauntlet Legends doesn't work and never trying it. Now as we move on to the third level here, again, everything loads in fine, all the enemies are here, all the effects are here, and it is just a stable experience made all the better by the Turbo Core. And of all the games that I think benefit, I would probably say this and Perfect Dark are my two favorite games to play on the Turbo Core. And don't get me wrong, I love Castlevania Legacy of Darkness, but that's still a very playable experience at these stock speeds. But with everything on screen in Gauntlet Legends at once, getting a higher frame rate just makes this a better game, because it is obviously so combat heavy. When the frame rate slows down, your responsiveness in the controls slows down as well. So this is just a faster, more fluid playing Gauntlet Legends while you get an improved frame rate all along the same time. And that is definitely something to celebrate as a win. And even though we're only at level 3 here just in this capture, again, absolutely nothing going wrong whatsoever. But I'm going to give you one more sound sample because the soundtrack is so good. Listen just for 30 seconds here, get a little bit of the quality of the Nintendo 64 core, and I'll come back and talk a little bit more about why this works in the first place. But enjoy. Again, everything sounds exactly like it should, and just on the Gauntlet Legends side of things in general, if you've never played this game before, I can't recommend it enough. I first saw this in arcades and I absolutely fell in love with it, and I have been looking for an arcade board to add to my collection, because as good as the Nintendo 64 port is, the arcade board is still the best way to play this game in my opinion. But honestly, having this here in the Turbo Core would probably be my second favorite way to play. There's something about the graphics here that I think look the best on Nintendo 64 compared to any of the ports that came out. They're probably the most accurate compared to arcade hardware, at least from a vibe perspective, but that's obviously a subjective opinion. You can feel free to disagree with me down below and tell me if you've ever played Gauntlet Legends before. I would be curious because I get a lot of questions about this game, but a lot of people haven't actually played it. They just say they heard it didn't work. Well, you can take this video, all of the different feedback I get from different people on Discord and from the channel, and I can tell you right now, multiple people have finished Gauntlet Legends from start to finish without seeing a single freeze whatsoever. And obviously, this game saves, so you should definitely definitely save your game often as you can. That way if you do encounter a single freeze, you can go back in and just restart the level. And the best part is all of the levels in Gauntlet Legends aren't that long, so if you do end up with one random freeze, you're just kind of losing maybe 5 to 6 minutes. And because the freezing is at random, it doesn't mean that it's going to freeze the same way every single time. And again, trying to get this game to freeze, doing so many things you would never do in a normal playthrough, I was still unable to do anything whatsoever. And big thanks to Andy D for helping with some of these captures. He's had the exact same experience. He wasn't able to freeze his Gauntlet Legends whatsoever. But short of that, that's the current situation with the current Turbo core. Remember, again, this does not come down with update all. You have to go to MiSTer Discord, you need to go under the test build channels, and you need to manually install this. If you guys are really having trouble with that, let me know down below, and maybe I will do an updated setup guide just for the Turbo core. But as far as Gauntlet Legends is concerned, I am adding it to the list along with Resident Evil 2 is games that have been made playable by the Turbo core. So stop what you're doing, go play Gauntlet Legends, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.